Good afternoon, everyone. And as you know, my name is Zenzi Sewa, and welcome to Spiritual Infinity. And of course, I'm here in London. And my guest today is Reverend Christine V. Davies, and she's in New Jersey, America. And she's going to talk about her spiritual journey in her life, what happened, what she went through, and how she came to be the person she is today, and her path and what she's doing on that path. Because we're all going through, it's a time of shaken to awaken, and we're all need to realize that we're all worthy of love, worthy of respect. There's nothing wrong with us. We're all just going our way, connecting to source, the creator, God, the mystic law, whichever name you want to give it, it's one and the same, because we are an extension of that. And it's time for us to awaken to that fact and know that power's within us, and we are never, ever alone. So without much ado, Reverend Christine, hello, as you're there in New Jersey.
Hello, it's so wonderful to be here, and I just so appreciate your opening words of just welcome and hospitality and really what love and spirituality is. So I'm delighted to talk more with you today.
So, as you know, it's about your journey. How did it start? When did it start? What did you go through? Because we're all going through in our own way, in our own pain and whatever. And it's about knowing that we're not alone. And maybe somebody can resonate with you and it will help them along their journey. So I hand it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am in New Jersey, and I am a Presbyterian minister. I'm also a hospital chaplain. I lead the chaplaincy program at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And on the side, I also work as a spiritual director, and I can talk more about all of those things. But most times when I meet people, they're like, well, you know, how did you get to do all of that? That's not a typical career choice. And it was a little bit of a long and windy road. I grew up in New Jersey, despite having my dad from England. So I grew up with a very funky accent, living in Jersey with a British father. But my family attended the local Presbyterian church, and much to the bewilderment of them, I really took to it. My sisters, not so much, but I loved going to Sunday school and playing bells in the choir and singing in the choir, even though I cannot carry a tune in a bucket. As a child, I did enjoy doing it. And I was pretty precocious as a child and was convinced of God's presence in my life. And I thought I needed to follow a career path that would help me to help the most people possible. I thought that's what God wanted me to do. And my mother was a nurse. And so I think that fanned the flame a bit for me, that I thought, oh, I need to go into medicine. That will be the way I can help God's people the most. But I had a number of medical issues that wound up with me in the hospital quite a bit, and eventually got diagnosed with generalized epilepsy, which I should mention is under control now. I've been well medicated for the past 10 years. I've been relatively seizure-free. But for a 17-year-old girl going through that and having to lose her license, and my hair was falling out due to the medications and weight gain, and really living with that uncertainty that I could have a seizure anytime. And mine were pretty dramatic seizures, like the kind that you would see on TV. I do like to point out 1 in 25 people have epilepsy. So it is really very common, but at the time I didn't know anyone that had gone through it. And so I was also bounced around from medical specialist to medical specialist until we got the diagnosis. And so that really led me to be dismayed with the field of medicine and the bedside manner of a lot of the medical professionals that I was coming into contact with. And it was around the same time we had a new associate pastor at my church, the first woman pastor I had ever met. And she took me out for dinner and just talked with me about what it was like for me to go through all of this.
Mm.
And as I look back, I'm like, oh, that was spiritual care. That was caring for the whole person, right? Not just doling out the medicine or
Yeah.
giving the test that's needed, the EEG, but that was asking, like, how is it with your spirit? How is this impacting your relationship with God? And to me, that was really meaningful. And I thought to myself, that's how I want to help people, to
Mm.
really be there when they're dealing with their suffering.
Yeah.
And then around the same time, I also worked as an emergency medical technician. So I was in the backs of ambulances helping people who were going through a medical crisis get to the hospital safely. And I would, bind their wounds, give them oxygen. But a lot of what I found myself doing was, sitting next to them, holding their hands while they were upset, while they were crying and saying, why is this happening? Or am I going to be okay? Sitting with that fear and just helping them to know, as you said before, they're not alone in it. And so those two experiences really helped me to see there's different ways to help people. Maybe it wasn't just that medical route I was thinking about, but that's what led me to seminary and to really learn about how to be a hospital chaplain and the work that we do on a daily basis with individuals.
Okay, could you just repeat that bit again, because you froze for a minute? So you were talking about being in the back of the ambulance, helping people, with medication, and doing the things what you want to do, or needed to be done. How did that lead you to become a hospital chaplain?
Yeah, so I recognized when I was in the backs of the ambulances with people, there was little I could do to fix them. Right. We were just trying to get from place A to place B. But what I could offer them was that comfort of knowing that they weren't alone, holding their hand, recognizing, their pain and their distress and normalizing it for them. Sometimes I even had people ask me to pray for them, which I was happy to do, although I never offered that unless people were actively requesting it. And so it was really those crisis moments of recognizing we need people in that gap to help navigate what is going on for them and how the physical is impacting them even spiritually.
Do you know, you're speaking about that, and I suppose we don't really, I don't know, I shouldn't speak for everybody. That time in the back of the ambulance when people are so ill, yet still awake, still present, you don't realize just how much they're feeling, the fear. Are they going to die? Are they going to make it? Will you pray for me at that time? And I've never really thought about it in that way. And you've brought to light that that's such a crucial time. Fear that they go through.
Yeah, it's very much a liminal space of waiting with tremendous anxiety. And those were the patients that were, awake enough to talk. How I see it show up in my work now is we have our chaplain is always part of our trauma team in the hospital. And so we go anytime there's a trauma call, so a car accident or a fall from a certain height or a gunshot wound, anything that would bring someone into the hospital, not specifically from a medical related issue, but from an outside trauma. And we're the family support person because we're the ones sitting with the family who show up and they're scared and they're waiting for the news of their loved ones. And even though, it does take a little while, it does take, 30 to 45 minutes for all the tests to be done and for the doctors to be able to give the family an update. And in that time, that is so hard for the families to endure, especially if a family member's there by themselves. So that's a lot of where we come in as chaplains to really help them, wait in that void.
You spoke about growing up. Well, all right, you went to Presbyterian church, and I take it that both your mother and father were quite religious within the church. So you had that you have that guidance to go that way, and which I find a lot of our youth today don't have that guidance when they're going through their difficulty. And therefore, when you were going through yours with your epilepsy and those fits, again, could imagine, as you say, that 17, how you would have felt.
Mm-hmm.
And then having that minister come and speak to you and help you and minister you. And I'm looking at today's youth, although now apparently there is a spurt, they are starting to go back to church. They are starting to look at that religious comfort, which is so great to know. But generally there was a lapse when our youth weren't going, and it was like, well, how do they get support? How is that happening? But there you had it, and that guided you to be strong and to ask questions. And from 17 onwards, say to in your mid-20s, 30s, how did you fare in life with your job and your work and with this feeling?
Yeah, so my life even took a few more turns. So I did go to seminary, and that was an experience in and of itself. There's even for someone such as myself who grew up in the church, there's a lot of questioning that happens in seminary on purpose. So you kind of evaluate those things that you thought you believed, and find out all sorts of things about various history, and learn lots of languages to read scripture in. So that was a lot of work. But I also I became a therapist for a little while. I became a cognitive behavioral therapist because I knew I was interested in seminary, but I didn't want to lead a church. I didn't want to preach every week. I still don't love preaching. It's a lot of stress. I like doing work behind the scenes of caring for people. And so that's what led me into the field of social work. And I was a therapist for a little while. And I thought ultimately I'll probably become a therapist for clergy. Maybe that will be the direction that I go in. And during a therapy job I had with dual diagnosis clients, so clients that were suffering from mental health issues as well as substance disorders, and they were mandated to come to see me for treatment instead of going to jail. So I was the drug court therapist. I had to do it was like 122-page biopsychosocial assessment with them. And when they started, and we went through all of the particulars of their lives, and it, very in depth, everything that's ever happened to them, what drugs they were using, how often, where they buy them, how much they cost. And then at one page, it was page 33 at the very bottom, and this was all handwritten. I'm not that old, but we didn't have computers because it was a community mental health center.
Everything had to be done by hand.
Yes, I had to bring my own pens to work. And so on page 33, there was a question at the very bottom that said, are you spiritual or religious? Yes or no? And if yes, one line. And I realized I would get so excited as we got to that question. And I was like, oh, I want to spend all my time in that question, looking at spirituality, looking at religiosity. And so that's what led me to go and pursue a residency within hospital chaplaincy, and then had me really pivot into that. And I love chaplaincy because I am getting to meet people all of the time and being there for them, often in their darkest days. I am around a lot of end-of-life situations. And I've also had times where I've had my own, medical issues, even after the epilepsy. I had a number of miscarriages, including one that was ectopic, that kind of had me in that same place again, where I'm like, I need someone to help me. And I remember saying to some friends of mine from seminary, I don't even have the words to pray to God right now. Can you pray for me? Because it's not happening on my end.
So painful, things you go through.
And then using that to help with others. So I meet so many patients who are angry at God. Especially, that's like the number one thing I see in my work. And a lot of what I like to do is normalize it.
Why did you allow that to happen?
Yeah, and I think that's a natural question, that why me question, because it speaks to us trying to make meaning in our lives, right? My kids are 11 and 9, and they love to say, "This isn't fair," if one gets a bigger dessert or something like that. But I think even as we grow up, we have a
Yeah,
sense of what's fair and what's not fair. And
yeah,
when we get diagnosed with something or something painful in our life happens, a lot of times our first instinct is to say, this isn't fair, even though we weren't ever promised, life was going to be fair. And
yeah,
so that is a lot of what I do, is I sit with people in their anger or their grief. And a lot of what I do is normalize it and say, it's okay. It's okay to be angry at God. Tell me what that looks like for you.
yeah. No, it's when I'm talking to people and I'm working with people, and I always give a story about when I became so angry, I swore, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I screamed that they would have they would have heard me at the end of the road, and it's just pure frustration because you feel that you're doing everything and you're praying, and you're not being heard on what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of calmed down. Well, I did calm within seconds, because we realize that everything that happens to us is for a reason.
Mm.
But you've got to get to that stage. You've got to understand that. And then a lot of people just say, as you say, why me? I didn't do this. I didn't do that. What did I do to deserve? And it's when you go deeper spiritually that then you don't ask those questions, because you start to understand things a bit more.
Yeah, and the why me question, it can actually be two separate things. So sometimes the why me, especially if it's in the midst of a crisis or in the midst of deep suffering, research has shown it's more of a lament. It's more of saying, like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And allow, like you said, like the cursing and there's even lament psalms that I walk people through a lot of times and say, for people that believe in God, I'm like, your God can take it. Like, let it out. Like, that
Okay.
is cathartic, right?
Yeah.
And then the other part of it, like when we are looking for the meaning behind things and more of how do we make purpose through our pain, that is another really, valuable task that can take a lot of time to get to. And so I like to remind people, something that happens to you today or tomorrow, it may not make sense to you for a while. There's some things still when I get to heaven, I'm going to say, God, I need some more detail about all of these things and why these things went on. But, looking back on my life, I can see now, oh, the epilepsy diagnosis, like that helped me to get on the path that I enjoy being on, this vocation that I do. Or even, all of my miscarriages, I am a better chaplain because of those. And I go and sit with women that are going through that now in the hospital. And I know a little bit about their pain, and I think I'm more effective when I'm with them and giving them care. So again, but these were decades of reflections that I had to do before I got to those places.
And thank you so much for saying that, because just that it took time. It's you don't understand that when you're younger, because you're still asking those questions. And this is why I say you have to go deeper spiritually. And the more you go deeper spiritually and you start to understand kind of how things work and the part you or I play in those roles that are occurring or maybe reoccurring, and it's not cut and dry, because there's many reasons why. Could be something you've created in the past. It could be something that you have to go through, you have to experience, because like yourself as a chaplain, you now can empathize with people who are going through that because you've been through it. This is suppose when you say you're talking the talk, now walk the walk, and you've walked the walk. You have to experience it, and some things you don't experience because of the pain that you've gone through with other things. You can kind of understand the reasons, and
Absolutely.
it is with experience, isn't it?
So part of my my role in my hospital is I also teach chaplains or interns that are wanting to be chaplains. How do you do this work? And I'm adjunct faculty at a seminary as well, and we talk a lot about pastoral care. And I often tell my students, look, you can have whatever fancy degrees that you want, and I have a couple of them, and I have the loans to prove it. But what really equips you to do this work is your pain and your ability to use that to be with people.
Yeah.
The fact that you know what it's like to be in the depths of the valley in the shadow of despair, that helps you.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's walking that path of life. Life is not meant to be all lolly lolly lolly, because then you don't experience anything. You have to have its ups and downs. And my dad used to say, there are no cherries without the pips, and it's the pips that make the cherries, which means you need your ups and downs to make your life have meaning.
Oh, I like that. The pits and the cherries. We sometimes in my house talk about the rose and the thorns, right? Like something can be beautiful and it can also be thorny.
Yeah. And this is just part of life, what we need to go through. But we go through that to not just to experience, but it's to build our spiritual muscle, to grow spiritually. Because for us to grow and be the person we're meant to be, it's like a soldier. If the soldier doesn't get up and go through the different things, and he goes and they take them abroad to go, they're never going to know what it's like. So you have to go through things to experience them. So Reverend Christine, so here you are in your 20s and 30s and going through things and having your children and miscarriages. What about your relationship? How did that help with your spirituality?
You mean my relationship with my husband?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he likes to read philosophy for fun, which is very different than what I like to do. And so really being with him has helped me to understand the broadness of life and looking at just how important it is to live fully every day, because we are not promised the next day. And so living kind of with the end in mind in my work, I frequently am, at people's bedside when they're dying. And my husband gets that. And we kind of have created our lives in a way where, like, we're not waiting until we're retired to take the trip. Or, we live on a hobby farm because we thought this would be a fun adventure to do. And how do we really make the most of our lives while we are here, knowing that tomorrow is not promised? So that is a lot of what he has brought me in the way that we go through things together. The other thing that I'll mention, I would sometimes officiate weddings, sometimes in the hospital when there is someone at end of life, and sometimes for my friends. So it's a little bit of a happier occasion. And a lot of times my wedding sermons are very similar. And it's, you need someone else to help you grow even deeper. So my husband likes to give me feedback all the time. I don't always want that feedback, but I know
want to hear what he's got to say.
That actually, yeah, he would tell you all sorts of things. Mostly it's about parenting and letting my kids, get away with too much. But I think it's important that we have people in our lives that can hold up a mirror to us and see things that we don't see. And I've actually come to appreciate that as a form of spiritual discipline. I can do as much self-reflection and introspection as I can. And, I certainly do a lot of that. But sometimes we need other people to point out painful truths to ourselves. And, there may be times I mess up as a boss and I talk about a situation with him and he's like, yeah, no, you read that wrong. You need to go back and you need to, make that right. And so I think especially this day and age when we kind of live in these echo chambers, having people that ground us and that are going to hold us accountable in love is really crucial.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it's And when you say having somebody in your life that makes you accountable, because I believe every situation you go through, be it work, whatever it is, it's all part of that journey. And when things become difficult, whichever sphere, as I said, work, social, whatever, it is about our perspective and our reaction that is probably bringing that situation about. And by having somebody close to you that you can discuss things with, it forces you to recognize the part that we play in our lives and the reactions we get, be it positive or negative. So yes, it's good to have somebody that is very close to you, that you're willing to listen.
Yes,
Because so
and to
many
be clear,
times
I'm not always willing.
yeah, no, because so many times things happen, and as I said, be it work, whatever, and it is about our perspective, our interaction, and whatever, and we don't see it as our fault when actually we've triggered it off. So having that person say that that's close to you, and that you trust, and that you know what they're going to say is not there to hurt you, but to point things out so you can be a better person. But then, as I said, everything is there to make us that better person, but we don't always want to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So how now you've got your partner in this there, and you're saying sometimes you let your children get away with too much, but mostly, when you're working with other people and you're having to help them through a difficult time. Let me ask you, we've just talked about bringing that mirror up. What is it like when you're having to help somebody through a difficult time and you have to show them or steer them in the way that they can see a positive side to that, although it may be painful when they're crying and saying, why me? How do you steer?
Yeah, so and I should specify, because I kind of have two ways that I do it. So I do work as a hospital chaplain, and then I also have a private practice where I do spiritual direction, where what that looks like is that's a one-on-one relationship that I have with people. We normally meet over Zoom, although I have a beautiful office in New Jersey. If your listeners ever want to come out and see me in person. And during that time, I'm spending, an hour with individuals, usually about once a month. And we're talking about what their relationship is like with God, or if they've had spiritual trauma in the past, or if they're trying to figure out what is it that I believe, what are the spiritual practices that might sustain me. So that's kind of that ministry as well. I would say the similarity in both of those is a lot of what I'm doing is attending to the pain that people may be experiencing. So there's very little I can do to fix things. And in the hospital, especially when a patient dies and the family's there, I like to say, maybe I make it 1% better just by being a presence, by getting them water, by saying a prayer if that's helpful, by asking about their loved one and hearing some of those stories, and walking them out in the maze that is the hospital and helping them to kind of bridge the gap of those next steps. And my chaplain interns will sometimes say to me, when they've experienced those situations, they say, Christine, at the end, the family hugged me and thanked me so much for all that I did, but I didn't actually do anything. I said, that's right, you were there. And so a lot of times we talk about the difference between being and doing, and sometimes just being present is really powerful. And we often downplay that, I think, in our society.
Yeah. So as you
and
say, sometimes it's not about what you say, it's just, it's about being present at the time. If they need to talk, or just it's a comfort, because they probably see you as a spiritual connection to the Creator that's present at the time of their pain. How do you how do you then, I suppose it's a difficult question to say, how do you then encourage them beyond that situation to help them? What advice do you give them? Because you've got that pain at the moment, but it's a continuation.
Yeah, so sometimes what I'll do is, and not all of the work that I do is around death, although that is the bulk of it. So sometimes I'm just meeting with a patient that's there for maybe more of a routine issue and will be released, but they have other situations in their life that are causing them, pain. So for instance, just the other day, I met with someone who was a patient in the hospital. They were there for just an appendectomy. But while they were in the hospital, their brother died in a different part of the country. And so going with them and talking with them about that, some of what I want to do is not lessen their pain, but also look at, okay, what are the resources that you have that have helped you in the past? When you've been through something difficult, what is it that you've turned to? For some people, that might be faith or religion. For some people, that may not be, with good reason if they've had some difficult experiences with that. The number one answer I get when I ask that question is, what helps you to cope or what helps you to handle these hard things? Number one, people say family. That is the answer that I hear most frequently. Sometimes when I ask, when do you feel most connected with the spiritual in your life, whatever that looks like, a lot of people will say in nature. That's usually a pathway to the divine for a lot of people. Others will say music is something that really speaks to their soul. So I think it's about helping the individual or the family to know, okay, what do you already have within you that will be a source of strength and resilience as you move forward?
No, yes, because so often we need to be reminded that we are very resilient and we are a connection or an extension of the Creator, and that the Creator created us in unconditional love, so that natural love flows through us, although sometimes it seems that it's been cut off or blocked. It's just for us to realize it's still there, and we need to work on it and share it. And it's sharing it with one another, and realizing we're individuals but not separate.
I like that. And it reminds me something else that comes up a lot in my work in all of the different contexts is sometimes I have to remind people, you can ask for help. You don't have to do this alone. Like, who are the people in your orbit who would want to be there if they knew what you were going through? And sometimes we, I think, get very individualistic or isolated and don't want to be a burden, or we have so many reasons why we're not asking for the help. But encouraging people to reach out and to have that sense of community is really essential.
To know that sometimes they think they're being a nuisance when people are willing to share, people are willing to help them. And because I find human beings as a whole, we want to be happy, and we are generally helpful people. It's just it's the minority that are not. It's not the majority. We have that love, that giving, that understanding that we want to help and share with people.
Yes. And what I also advise people to do is be specific in your ask for help. So a lot of times when we know our friend is going through something, our family member is going through something, we might reach out, we might say, let us know what you need. But that's overwhelming for the individual sometimes. And so I coach people that are wanting to support grievers or people going through something to say, I can pick up the kids from school, mow your lawn, or get groceries, or all three. Which one do you want me to do? Or something else entirely. Be very specific in what you're offering. And then the person can say, no, I don't really need that, but could you, my car needs to be picked up from the shop. Can you do that for me? The other thing is people that are going through things, I encourage them to say, what is it that you really need? Well, what I really need right now is someone to come over and clean my house because I have to host people here after the funeral and I can't even, come to terms with how messy things are. So you say, okay, ask a friend if they want to come over and clean or if they want to donate to you to hire a cleaning service and arrange all of that. Like those are very specific tactile things that we can do for one another and can make a huge difference.
And yeah, you're very true in what you say. Sometimes, even in our prayer, sometimes we can be too general, and it's about being specific because it's about our life, what we need for ourselves, and what we need to make us happy. And it is about being specific, although the Creator knows, but it's about bringing it out and not feeling ashamed to bring it out, not feeling ashamed to ask for that help, not feeling ashamed that you're not worthy or people don't love you or you're bothering somebody. It's allowing people to stand up with you. You are also
no, that's a beautiful way of putting it.
That person's giving you that gift of support, but you give them a gift by allowing them to support you. You know, if somebody offers you something, if you don't take it, they then can't get their own blessings or feeling good that I've done something for somebody. You've got to be able to give and take, and it's a two-way street.
Yes, and it's about knowing what we need and knowing how to express that to other people. It was about me, when I was going through things, me saying to my friends, like, I need you to pray and giving them a direct ask of a task. Like, this is what I need from you in this moment because I don't have the words. Of course, they did more than just that, but even knowing that they were doing that was supremely helpful to me. And so too, especially for people who are grieving a major loss in their lives, I hear from, I used to run bereavement groups and I would hear from individuals all the time, people did a lot at the very beginning when someone died, in the kind of the initial couple days around the funeral, that sort of thing. But then they kind of forgot. And even just having a space where you say to someone, I'm thinking about you, and especially, if there's a holiday coming up or the anniversary of the death, to say, if you want to talk about your loved one, I'm happy to listen, because a lot of times society moves on when that person is still in pain. So it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. I even recommend sending a card 6 months after a funeral or 6 months after a death, because that loss is still very real for that individual going through it, and just telling them that their loved one is still in your mind and that you're caring about them is huge.
Yeah, very true, because I always say to people, and as you just mentioned, when that death or that sorrow or whatever it is you're going, it's fresh. People are buzzing. It's like everybody's around. And then when things calm down, it's like old news and people get on with their life. And you're left there. And there's a lingering. And that pain is still very fresh with you, with us. We still have to cope with it. And depending on what it is, especially if it's the death of a loved one or a child, no parent should have to bury their child, but these things happen. Or, death of a mother or so. And it is at the later stage, that's when silent kind of kicks in and you're faced with that situation. And I think that's when the time we really need to face our spirituality to get us through it. It really brings
I like to define I like to define spirituality in 3 ways. It can be our connection to ourselves, and when we feel truly ourselves and authentically us. It can also be about our connection to other people. And then it can also be about our connection to the divine. Some people call God, some people might call the universe. And so there's
Yeah.
3 different realms of it. And sometimes when one of those relationships gets broken, it can impact our entire sense of spirituality. So if I'm going through something and my community kind of has moved on and isn't acknowledging, this deep pain, that can cause a rift in my own spirituality. Or if, when we go back to those making why questions, if I deduce that God has done something to me for a reason that I don't agree with, like that's going to impact my relationship with
Why
God.
me?
Yeah, exactly. Or if I'm going through a medical crisis and I can't even trust myself or my body to do the thing it's supposed to do, that can also cause a rift. So any one of those areas can bring about what we call spiritual distress. And so I'm always mindful of listening for those signs of spiritual distress and what can help heal those.
No, that's wonderful. So, Christine, fast forward now to present day, and you're a reverend, and you're doing different things. What are the things, apart from your one-to-one? What are the? You said now you have this spiritual guidance. What does your spiritual guidance look like?
Sure. So, spiritual direction is the term, and anyone that's looking for a spiritual director, there is a directory online at spiritualdirectorsinternational.org. And you can look for a spiritual director if you want to meet with someone in person or if you want to meet with someone in Zoom. I'm certainly open for clients as well. And what it looks like is having someone else be present to the way in which God or the Spirit is moving in your life. And some of my spiritual directees that I work with are very religious. Some are clergy. Some have not set foot in a door of a church for, 30, 40 years. So it really varies. And, therapists might really attend to what's going on with you in terms of your mental health. A doctor is going to be there for your physical health. Spiritual directors, we try to be there for your spiritual health. And so sometimes we are looking at those anger at God pieces. Sometimes we're looking at the way in which grief has impacted someone's spirituality. Sometimes I'm sitting with people and we unpack what their spiritual upbringing has been like. And sometimes there's a lot of toxicity within different religions and institutions, and issues related to abuse within the church or other settings. And so we look at all of those things and help them to kind of carve out a new spiritual path going forward.
Okay, sorry, just repeat that again, because I lost you for about 30 seconds. You were in and out.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I was
okay.
saying spiritual directors, we sit with people around different issues, the ways in which their spiritual life is being impacted by anger, by grief, by heartache, or just people that are wanting more of a connection with the divine in their life, and whatever that might look like. And for some individuals, what we're doing is looking at kind of their spiritual histories, the ways in which they were brought up, particularly if there's been spiritual toxicity or abuse in some of the institutions.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that, because yes, it's not just what you're facing in your daily life, but what has gone on in the past. And as you said, it's a reflection, especially in some of the spiritual institutions or some of the social institutions that they've grown up in. That's still very much anchor in that person and affecting them in their daily life, and to have that guidance. Do you find that is something rising, or something that is finding its way? People are more willing to speak about those things, to seek for help and not feel ashamed that it may be their fault or a situation.
I do think that I have had, certainly within the hospital, I had lots of individuals talk to me and say like they wouldn't necessarily have felt comfortable talking to a religious leader about some of these things because of judgment or shame.
Yeah.
But since I was more of an anonymous individual representing spirituality, they felt more comfortable. I also think we are seeing a rise right now of individuals that are trying to parse out the difficulties with institutionalized religion and not kind of throw everything out with it, but recognizing, okay, this part of this teaching that I had growing up was problematic, but I'm not going to turn my back entirely on what it means to be spiritual. Or some of what I'm doing is also teaching people different types of spiritual practices. So sometimes people have learned meditation in the yoga studio. I'm like, that's fine. There's also versions of Christian meditation if that would be helpful for you. Or people might think the only spiritual practice that they have at their disposal is reading the Bible for 20 minutes and feeling guilty if that's boring for them. And I say, well, there's lots of different spiritual practices that we can try on, and some are going to work for you and some aren't. And it's about identifying what is it that you're craving in this particular season and how we might cultivate some practices that will help you around that.
Yeah. I thank you for saying that as well, because we are living in times where we don't need to be strict and regimented, but try and find out how we can help people to connect what is right for them. And it is sometimes gentle feeling out how to gather them around because of that pain, and how to make them feel strong enough to talk about and connect and to God, the creator, whatever, knowing that they're not in their own. There is that force around, and it didn't desert them at all, because they can feel like it deserted them. It wasn't there.
Yeah,
And
so many people I know feel like that.
Yeah. So, Reverend Christine, you've done so much and you've got these different practices. If somebody wanted to, our viewers are listening, and wanted to connect with you, how do they go about doing that?
Sure. So they can look at my website. It's christinevdavies.com. On there, I have all my social media links. If they want to work with me, they can reach out to me. If they want to just hear more about spiritual direction, I can help them find a different spiritual director, especially if they want someone local to them. And I also write a lot about these things. So I'm a pretty regular writer on Substack, and you can read any of my past articles about spiritual distress, people asking why, what to do when you're angry at God, different spiritual practices. Those are all on there.
Okay, I will have to connect with you there, because I'm on Substack, and it's
great. I love it as a platform. It's been really lovely to be on there.
I love that platform because people are, it's not frivolous. It's about solid matters, solid talk, serious, and yet can be jovial, but speaking out, but also hearing, and some facing that. So before we say thank you and goodbye, please leave us with, I say, a nugget or two of advice for our viewers who are going along their pathway. What can you advise them at this present time? It's a magical time, but it's a trying time, and we're all awakening that. What advice can you give us to help us along our journey?
Yeah, so I would invite all of us, and your listeners included, to reflect on what is it that they might be longing for in this season of their life, whatever that looks like, wherever they are. What is it that they're hoping for? And then once you can name that to yourself, it makes it a little bit easier to go and seek it out. So for some
Yeah.
people, it might be community. It might be a stronger sense of connection with God. It might be, healing in certain relationships. But I think if we can name that to ourselves, that's the first step in the direction towards spiritual wholeness.
That is so good. That is so, yeah, it is identifying really what you want and then take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
Yes.
so much
Oh, you're
for that.
so welcome.
So without any further ado, Christine, as you like me to call you, but it's nice to say Reverend Christine to you. Here is a woman who is doing, and working with those with so much pain and anger, and at the same time, not being judgmental, but guiding you gently. So I hope you've enjoyed our recording today. And I say thank you to Christine, who's in New Jersey, and to everybody. You know how to contact her. You know how to get hold of her. So please do reach out if you need to. But for now, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.